Okay, so good evening. I'm Dr. David Flanigan. I'm the Vice Chair of the System Engineering Program. I've been a project mentor before, and I'm one of the two systems engineering instructors. Myself and CJ Utara, Christian Utara, is one of the other ones, for the as the instructor. And the way this works, for the system engineering project, you work with a mentor. We'll talk about this in the slides. You work primarily with the mentor throughout your entire project. The last hour, the final presentation, and the grades come to the instructor. So that's either myself or CJ Utara. Okay, so within this, this is just to be able to give you sort of an overview of what the project is, what it's about. You've probably heard this a little bit about the project from either some of your peers that have already gone through this, some of the instructors, and we're trying to push this sort of earlier in the curriculum for this, just to get you acclimated to the project. So this is just an opportunity to have a question and answer session. I've got a few slides that kind of step you through the process through a generic project and where we're headed for this. So along the way, please jump in with the text chat to be able to ask any questions on here, and then we'll get finished in plenty of time, I think, before the hour, and we'll just take any questions. Okay, so I'll just kind of continue on for this. So this will be, again, just a description of what the project is. And you don't have to be registered for the project just now. You don't have to be starting it, right now in the spring semester, just to get a sense of what you're doing, get a sense of, what you can start thinking about. We're trying to push this a little earlier in the curriculum, as we've noticed that it's to give students a little bit more lead time, a little bit more heads up to be able to kind of think about their project. And the intent is to be able to go in, register for one semester, and then get your project completed within one semester there. Okay. A little bit on the Blackboard website, and we'll talk about that, but it's really a different website than the traditional Blackboard site. You'll actually talk to Jackie Rowe about getting access, and let me get to that. So again, introducing the project, answering any questions. These slides will be on the project Blackboard site. You need access to that. Again, other helpful resources. When I went through this as a student in the system engineering project, yeah, that was a good help to ask some of my peers that had already done this. Hey, what'd you do? Just to kind of demystify the process, and that's totally fine to understand what you're going through there. The website also has some example projects. Um, they're not all, A+ projects, but it's just to give you a variety of different formats, different looks, different ways that everyone has done this. Some have used tools, some have not used tools. We'll get into that near the end. But again, the intent here is that there's not a specific format. So if you like someone's trade study, how they did that, that's great. But if you like another person's the way they did requirements or architecture or things like that, this is why we provide a whole bunch of different different examples for you to consult. Okay, so like I mentioned, that this project website is different than your normal Blackboard site that you have for courses here. Okay, so how do you get access to this? This is generally we recommend as you're finishing your test and evaluation class, you will have all the skills that you've learned through the other previous courses to then be able to do the project. Some students will do that right after the test and evaluation. They'll go into their project. Some will wait about a year. They'll take a couple of electives, and that's perfectly fine. You can take some electives if you know that's going to be your project. You can get some more domain experience and information about that, and then jump into the project. Totally up to you, but really the minimum is that test and evaluation. And it's intended to be able to go through, each of the main core classes, starting from the Introduction to System Engineering course, your management of projects, or management of complex systems. That's the next one. Gets a little bit of the project management, and then you get into the conceptual design. That's the one I teach. So that's again, some of the requirements, some of the functions, some of the physical architecture, some of the trade studies, design and integration, test and evaluation, and recently, if you've joined the program within the last year, software system engineering, we're making that as a required course. So that gives you all the different skills that, again, you can do and apply, and that's really what it's intended to be able to exercise your skills for the project here. So see Jackie Rowe right here down below is the link for assistance to be able to get on the website, get access, and then also get a mentor. Okay, and I think I've got some slides about those. So again, you've got some different examples on this website so that you can see the level of detail there. So ideally, you should be doing this the semester before you register. So thinking about a topic, and this is probably the hardest part because it's at the very beginning, and this is unlike your other 9 classes that you're going to take, where you've got within our curriculum, where you've got a structure, an outline, a set start and stop time, and you know what you're going to be doing. This class is different from all of them. This class, it's totally self-paced. You set the schedule, you do all the work. There are no classes. You pick the topic and you work through it all. I think we're going to get through this in a little bit, but yeah, you work with your mentor. They're not going to hold you to your schedule. You have to hold yourself to your schedule, and so it's very different. So if you're good about tasking yourself, reporting to yourself, and following up with yourself, you'll have no problem. If that's a little challenge for you, then kind of start to work on that to be able to think about that. So as you get access to the website, you'll also get access to be able to select a project mentor. Okay, so that's someone that you're going to be working with kind of continually throughout the project, and then you'll see CJ or myself at the very end, at the final presentation. Again, that's just an hour. You work with your mentor for the whole semester. We recommend picking a topic before the semester starts. We've got some other words, I think, in here in terms about a timeline. But yeah, that's some of the thoughts in terms of getting a project and picking a project. And then as you let me go here for a sec. Okay. Yeah. So let me jump forward one and then come back. So as we were talking about the timeline here, what we're really trying to do is encourage everyone to have a project or proposal be approved by both your mentor and instructor and have that ready to go prior to registration. And actually, that's kind of our policy now. We've done that so it gives you the best chance to be able to register for the class, start with a running start, and start progressing through your project here, and then get finished within that semester. About a year ago, we saw a lot of people extending here. and that wasn't really the intent. They'd extend 1 semester, 2 semester, 3 semesters. It kind of got out of hand there. And then once you start extending different semesters, your likelihood of finishing is approaches zero here. So what we've done in the last year, and it's actually worked out pretty good. So um, if you extend another semester, it's 5% each semester. After the third extension, you have to start all over again, repay for the course here. So if that's a big deal to you, some will do that. A lot of it has actually kind of motivated folks to just stay with the schedule. Not try to polish it so highly that you get the 100%, but it took you 3 semesters. That's just like any project that you have in the real world, right? So if you have a due date, it should be done by then. Um, otherwise, if it's really late, but if it's perfectly correct, but it's late, that's not as good. So some of the thoughts here was that we like you to get started before the semester starts. You'll deal with the mentor, and this will possibly go back and forth a couple of times. So with the proposal, it talks a little bit about what your topic is, why is it important, why do you need system engineering, a little bit of a context diagram, sort of like kind of get you thinking about holistically how is this your system concept going to look like. What do you have in terms of risks? What do you have in terms of some scenarios, some metrics? Just kind of getting you thinking about the project there and about the topic. That you may have to bounce back and forth with your mentor a couple times. Then once they've said yes, this is approved, then it goes to the instructor, either myself or CJ, and then we'll either approve it or decline it for some extra work. So given all of that, this could take up to about a month. Again, it's some of the rework, some of the delays to review it, and then give you feedback, and if you have other, rework. So that's where we're saying, roughly that's about a month. I mean, it could be really quick and you could zip through it, and it could be greater than a month. But just if you allow for a month, and this is the timeline on the slides that you'll have in the on the Blackboard website, we generally think about maybe 10 weeks. And that may be a little bit of buffer there. Um, but again, you can start to think about kind of looking at that prior to starting. Okay, so that's what we're thinking about in terms of timelines. And then as you start to get into the topic, again with the project, the mentor and the instructor difference, we'll go through some of these deliverables. We've got some other recommendations and some lessons learned. During this proposal time, you'll also have you'll lay out your own schedule. So if this is for the spring, you lay what your schedule is out. Of course, you gotta update that, and then don't forget that at the very last week, and especially the spring semester, we see this a lot because graduation, is a big deal because that's once a year in the spring. People are trying to jam it in at the last minute. Of course, you got to schedule it now with the mentor, now with the instructor. So as you can imagine, the last semester or last week is pretty hectic there. You can choose to work as quickly as you can. So if you want to be able to finish at the beginning of May instead of the middle of May, totally fine. That's actually a lot easier for everyone. But again, that's something to kind of think about. And as we're getting about maybe 50 or so students through this project during the semester here. Okay, so we talked about the timeline, and again, the project mentors, and again, they will help review a lot of your products, your deliverables. Will go into some of those, answer any questions, but again, they're not gonna beg you or nag you about hey, you said your requirements were supposed to be due January 6th. Where is it? They're not going to do that. You are responsible for your own schedule. So you send it in. You work the same way through this Blackboard site. There's again submissions to be able to put all your deliverables on there. We generally encourage that because then that gives some configuration control. They're able to grade it, return the feedback, and as you can see, that's probably a little better to do that rather than doing it by email. You may potentially lose the emails, or configuration control is really the big thing. Okay, so again, select a mentor. They've got some mentor biographies and backgrounds on the website, and then you can work with Jackie for selecting a mentor. You may have seen some of them because almost all of them will have taught a class within the curriculum as well. Or if you get some of your peers that have already gone through there, they can probably also to help you out with some of their mentor ratings, so to speak. You know, which ones worked well and which ones probably not as well. Okay, so as you're doing the proposal, you need to think about this concept. And what's your topic? What are you gonna do here? So when I was a mentor, I would always recommend to folks that were just starting out, like, hey, just write a couple of sentences, or you know, a paragraph or two, you know, and bounce it off your mentor. You know, and hey, here's like 3 or 4 topics. What do you think? You know, a paragraph each. You know, that's a little bit of time that you're working with, but not a lot. Um, but you have to dig into some of the research, some of the details, and then kind of, you know, try it out here. And again, this will vary between, you know, how much information or how comfortable you are with the topic. You know, and sometimes it's the context diagram, you know, as you've seen in the classes, you know, helping to understand what exactly your whole project is going to be. The mentor will help you scope it as well. So, you know, don't do an entire, you know, military aircraft. That's like way too complex, and you're not going to get finished in a semester. But maybe scope down just a little bit, you know, in something that looks, you know, you're able to the level of detail that you need to go into, and the complexity is still good enough to be able to warrant system engineering. So for my project, when I was a student, I did the landing subsystem of a unmanned aerial vehicle landing on a Navy aircraft carrier. Okay, so not the entire UAV, not the entire air vehicle, way too complex, but you jump into that little bit of the subsystem there, had a little bit of the sensors, a little bit of the communications, a little bit of the processing. You're also communicating with you know, different parts of the carrier itself, some of the other aircraft that are airborne. So it was complex enough, I think, to be able to show the systems engineering style there. Uh, other examples just off the top of my head there, you know, some with traumatic blast injury, sort of sensors, you know, for Army and ground systems. There's elevators for cars that are in, you know, high-rise apartments. A little bit of not on a set, or it's part of a satellite, but it's like a little ball, a little sensor that would kind of move around the satellite to kind of inspect it for damage. So it's not the entire satellite; it's just a little bit. So things like that. Those are just some examples there. So yeah, just kind of think about where you're headed for that. Some of the tips here: try to avoid work-related. So this is a couple of different directions that we can go here. Why we kind of discourage. You can do it. You're not you're not forbidden to, but you know, we've seen over time, needs to be unclassified, needs to not have proprietary you know, information. Again, you're going to put this on the Blackboard website there. And one of the main things, though, is that if we've seen it time and time again, because it's real easy and convenient to go down the hall, talk to your coworkers, use them as stakeholders, elicit requirements. You think that's great, and generally a lot of your coworkers will try to help you and do the solution and try to solve the problem. They're not being the stakeholders that you need them to be. And so they'll try to just drive you down a rabbit hole. We've seen this a lot of times. So try to avoid it, but it's again, it's not a requirement that you can't do work related. So that's the, and also kind of think about as that divides between the professional and the academic world. So again, think about those thoughts in terms of your work related projects there. Um, Again, I've heard horror stories before. Again, when I was a student, folks would be working through it. They'd get it, they'd finish their project, a whole semester's worth of work, go to their company for their public release. Hey, I'm gonna give my final presentation next week. Can you go through this? And they said no, can't do it. It's not releasable, and they just lost their entire project. So not good, not a good story there. So anyway, those are some thoughts there. Other thoughts in terms of concepts. I think we've got we may have this at the end, but you know, any sports, any hobbies, some non-work related, topics, totally fine. Or if you see something again through your electives, those may also help you with some of the domain. And try to think of it something that you're going to uh, want to look at every day for the whole semester. Don't pick a topic that you're going to hate because you're going to hate it even more after working through it for an entire semester there. Okay. So again, continuing with the proposal, some of the other things to be able to think about as we put that in there. Talks about your scheduling, talks a little bit about your risks. Again, kind of getting you in the mind there, thinking about a little bit of a block diagram. Again, getting you um, just getting in the ballpark in terms of what do you think about in terms of the interfaces? What are the functions? How does that kind of spawn some of the requirements? It's not the final design. It's just one diagram, but that kind of gets you into the thing there. So again, the intent here is to get you in the ballpark um, because you have to again get your mentor and instructor to review this and approve it prior to registering. So again, that's where the bogey of about a month comes in. So think about that in terms of proposal. And then as you're kind of getting started thinking about it, think about those key stakeholders that you're going to interface with. So as you've seen with previous classes, hey, how do you elicit them to gain some requirements? Gain some other feedback in terms of the trade study. Ask them about what's their desired sort of criteria for the trade study as you're kind of doing some of the criteria weighting. So again, it's intended to be an academic exercise. So make sure as you talk to them, that's kind of what that is. If you're going to go into a work related effort, or again, remember to kind of keep that sort of separated if you're gonna go down that route. And also think about some of the risks, some of the metrics, some of the initial architecture. Again, that's sort of in the proposal, but that's again sort of more of a scheduling. Think about that, and again, you'll have a bunch of other examples on the website. Okay, so now with that, so hopefully that we spent a lot of time on the concept and on the proposal, on the topics. But again, that's kind of important to be because that's your first entrance criteria to register for the class, and then once you're registered, then you're off to the races. All right. So note here that say you get this approved, and we have actually got a bunch of folks that have already got their proposals approved. Um, last month. You can absolutely work on this. You don't have to wait till the semester starts and January 25th or so or 28th. to be able to do this. You can continue on with your mentor and work it prior to the semester starting. I actually did that when I was a student. Kind of worked over the winter break and got a bit done, and so I got done about halfway through the semester, and that was good for everyone. But you know that was just me. But you can absolutely work on it before, because again there are no classes, so we need to kind of make sure that you all understand that. Okay, so now you've registered for the class. You're in there. There's two sections. There's an online and there's a live um, section for the project. So what we've got right now is that if you're in the local area, you know, around the APL area, you'd probably take you know, the section that, so it's like the 800.23, I think for this section. So that would be if you're at APL or if you're in the local area. The other one would be I think section 81. That's online. So if you're not in the local DC area, um, the only real difference is that your final presentation, again, I usually take the live students. So if you're doing your presentation, you come to APL and you do your hour presentation. If you're down in Southern Maryland or online, then you're working with CJ. Um, as you expect now, about 90% of students now are online. So we'll actually tag team it a little bit. So if you get online, CJ may be full, his schedule may be full, and you may have me as your instructor near the end. Um, that's not a requirement to come to APL at all. You can just do this. Actually, we do this over Adobe Connect for the final presentation. So that's really the only difference in the section there. Okay, Ryan. Yeah. So good question. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you can work this now if you want to. Yeah, in your example, if you know you're not going to make the May time frame, yeah, absolutely, you can work it before and not register until the summer. So absolutely there, and your mentors and your project mentor will work with you and review the products. So the only time point that I want to let everyone know about. So graduation for Hopkins comes around once a year. So it's always in May. So right after the spring semester ends. If you want to, you come to Baltimore. It's in the Inner Harbor. It's a good deal to be able to come and do the graduation here. So folks will generally do a lot of their presentations kind of near that for the spring. You also have the option if you do it in the summer or the fall. This is, you know, let's say like summer 2019, fall 2019. Um, you would go to the spring 2020 graduation time. So yeah, so if that's the only thing. If you're thinking about graduating now, want to do, you know, finish and, you know, get to graduation for the spring, back to Ryan's question, then yeah, you would want to try to push through if that's of importance to you. Um, Not required again to go to graduation. Your diploma will read, you know, whatever semester that you finish for there. Okay. Yeah, Grant. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just kind of work with your yeah, work with your mentor. Yeah, work with the instructor. Just make sure they're reviewing that. Yeah, and absolutely you can register. Again, it's not a hold on a sec here. I'm get CJ trying to get in here. Um, Yeah, it's not for the yeah, you can register a little late. No problem. And Nicholas, yes, the recording will be posted, and you'll also get this there. So let me pause for a sec. Let me get CJ online. I'll be right back here. CJ should be jumping in here a moment here. So yeah, so hopefully Ryan and Grant, yeah, get those good questions there. Okay, so as we're jumping into the first project, and yeah, absolutely, that we've also seen students that have started like right now, like literally like today. Hey, I'm going to start, get my topic, kind of get this process through, and actually finish. I mean, it's a rare, but they can actually do it because they're focused and good to go for that. But yeah, absolutely, we can. Um, I think it's the 28th is the first day of class. And yeah, if you're still working with your project mentor and instructor around that time, yeah, we'll still allow the registration. What we've done right now is have a manual process, and so we don't allow folks to be able to uh, just register. You have to go through the review process first before you register for the class. Okay. All right. And CJ, how's it going? Got gave you the right link here. Okay. So also on the here is CJ Utara as another one of the instructors there. Okay. So we'll just kind of go through some of these products. We won't go through the entire details to make sure we get through it and go through all the questions. But again, the requirements is the first document. This is probably the more challenging because it's the first element of there. These are some of the things that, and again, you can read some of the other projects, examples here, but it's, the description. What are the requirements? Think about the concept of operations. Think about the risks. Think about the schedule, as you kind of work through this. Note that the requirements are probably gonna get modified throughout the entire project here. So don't think that you got to polish it and get the requirements 100% correct, because there's about 5 more products there to be able to jump through and get in. So you'll probably refine these along the way. Some of the functional analysis, and again, this comes back from the requirements are again from conceptual design, also introduction to system engineering. Functional analysis again is going to come from conceptual design primarily. Think about the functions. Think about the different diagrams. Think about the traceability. Traceability is key throughout the whole project, and we'll talk a little bit about tools in the end. But again, how do your functions trace to your requirements? What are the changes in requirements? What are the changes to your risks? What are the changes to your schedule? The intent here is to be able to run this like a system engineering project. So, you're always updating your schedule. So you set the schedule, so now you're just going to update it. You've set the risks. Now look at how you're mitigating those. And some of them might not have any work or status on them in that one deliverable, but maybe the next one. Okay. The goal is not to drive all of these down to the green box in the risk cube. Because you're not building anything. We kind of walk you up to about the A-spec sort of part there. So again, sort of think about some of the risks that you're going along. Okay. You break into, so you had the functional, now you have the physical architecture. That's the conceptual design part. Again, that's now you're into a little bit of conceptual design, starting to get a little bit into the design and integration course. Think about the physical architecture. Think about the traceability. There's hardware and software. Generally, you're probably going to have a project that'll have both. We try to discourage just pure software projects because that's a little bit more on the software engineering sort of spin. We want you to also think about the hardware as well. And how do those, back to the traceability, how do the components link to the functions who links to the requirements? Again, as you start to learn a little bit more about your project, what are your changes in your functions, what are your changes in your requirements, and again, updating risks and schedule. Your trade study. And again, a little bit from the intro to system engineering and a little bit in the conceptual design. Thinking about the trade studies, what's the criteria? What are the requirements? What are the risks? You're doing some of the research. You're doing some of the analysis. Who's the winner? How does it integrate? Ideally, your trade study winner should help inform your conceptual design, physical architecture. Now that you've got some specific piece, and again, it's not the entire system. Just pick a small portion of your concept to be able to do that trade study. Again, it's a exercise of your system engineering skills that you've learned. Along the way, you've got risks that you're updating. So you're identifying your risks. You're identifying where you're at with the waterfall, as you can see down there, tracking them where you think they're going to go, where they're actually going, what your mitigation plans are, and also what is in and out of your control. That was a big thing that I had learned when I was going through it. There's some risks that you just can't control. It's done by someone else, out of your hands. So don't try to report a risk and be penalized for it that you can't have under control there. Okay, and then again, you're going to see risk as you've seen throughout your classes. Okay. A relatively new thing that we started about a year ago. You have a test and evaluation class, so we wanted to have you put something in there in terms of test planning. So again, just a small portion in terms of planning, the facility, the traceability, and again, sort of the changes in your requirements, functions, components, risks, and schedule. So again, getting that test aspect also into that because you have a class. And then finally, your system specification. Really, it's kind of your final set of requirements, final set of architecture. If you've been doing this throughout, as you've been updating this throughout, this is pretty easy at the end in terms of the specification because this is the finalized approach. If you're not updating them, along the way, what happens? This becomes a kind of a lot of work. Okay. And again, your final report, and there's a final report and there's a final presentation. So a final report, this is only like about a 5 to 10 page thing. Think about this as an executive summary. If you're going to take your entire project, and back in the day when you did this live, we printed it out and it was a 3-ring binder that was pretty full of all of your products that you've seen along the way. And again, you'll see in the example projects. So just distill that down to like a 5-page, here's what you did, just broad broadly of what the project is, but then again, it's also some of the personal lessons learned and some of the recommendations, some of the reflections, and again, we're always keen on improving our course, and so there's other suggested modifications. So again, that's sort of the this should be a relatively small lift for the final reports and the final presentation. Again, you've done all the work before, so now this is just kind of compiling it all, and this is where your mentor will help. So generally, it's about 45 minutes that we allow in terms of just the final presentation. Either CJR and I will receive the presentation. Your mentor will be there 98% of the time. They are there to help you out, but 98% of the time they don't need to, because if they've gotten you through up to this point and then approved those reports, then you are good to go. So again, it's more of a how do you distill all of your work for a semester down into a succinct presentation. You don't need to go through every single detail, but just show here's what you've done in each of the points. And again, CJ and I will read these. Go through your reports, all of them, prior to the presentation going. So this is like about a 30 slide kind of effort there. It's not like a 150 slide presentation. Okay, and then after that, you're given your grade and you're good to go. And then you get put on the graduation list if this is your last project or last class, and you're off to the races there. I do have a couple more slides here, just sort of other tips. As we're going through each of those deliverables there, your mentor, you work with them through Blackboard. You may also need to do a little rework potentially. That happened to me, when I was going through the program. Hey, you did great, except these other parts, or they'll find some details. So that's something to kind of consider. Don't think like if you do it once and you're done, the mentors will kind of work with it iteratively there until they're satisfied. So again, think about that. And it's also it depends how you work. If you're the type that wants to work it iteratively, hey, I'm going to do just a little bit just to be able to get your thoughts, give you the 30%. Hey, that's good. They'll give you some other comments. Or on the other hand, you may be like, I'm not going to talk or not going to send you anything until the final product, and then we can kind of iterate and get the feedback. Either way is fine. Just make sure you talk with your mentor about that. Okay. And then the last couple slides here are just some other lessons learned, some other recommendations, that you have, and that we've also kind of seen, kind of going through the program here. So again, there's some other thoughts here about configuration control. We already talked about Blackboard. That's one way for configuration control. As you're talking with your mentor, you should probably have your own configuration control system. Is that your own computer, dedicated, flash drive, network, box, whatever, to be able to think about that. Think about some of the time that you're going to have to dedicate to this. So don't take another class during this, while you're doing the project. That is not recommended at all. And obviously, just like any other project or class, keep all your notes in one place, because again, you're going to be thinking about this for basically the entire semester there. Couple thoughts about MBSE tools you saw in some of the slides. So some core excerpts. If you had my class, conceptual design, we introduced it. We didn't require it. Each class, each instructor in the curriculum has some preferences, or some are a little bit more aggressive in terms of using MBSE. It's not required. We are actually building a couple of new MBSE courses in the curriculum, I think to satisfy to go along with the system engineering community that is going along with this. So there's a couple other tools. There's Core that you have the ability, once you get access to the website, to be able to get the license. There's a few others on there. Star UML, that's freeware. Innoslate, that's freeware. Magic Draw, we're starting to work with the No Magic folks, and so that'll be on there soon. So you've got a lot of capabilities. You got a lot of tools. It's again not required for that, but we're going to show you another slide in a moment to help motivate some of the reasons why you may want to consider it, especially if you're going to do system engineering after this class, in your professional or after this master's in your professional organizations. Yeah, absolutely, you need to have some sort of capability in any other tools that you may also have as well. This project is small enough where you can do it all in PowerPoint and Word and Excel and keep all your configuration control in Excel, no problem. But we'll actually show you in another slide here. These are some of the things that you have to kind of consider there. So MBSE tools, you've got a lot of the traceability. You're able to generate some of the diagrams, and you've got configuration control. Obviously, any tool, you need to learn it a little bit. Core, and you've got some links there. They're actually on YouTube. There's actually 2 sets now specifically for the project. So if you use this link here, you just type JHU Core, Chris Olson, and he actually has a very good in-depth sort of description about how to use Core. Sometimes it's not as intuitive as some of the others, to be able to walk you through some of the steps here. Okay, so the key point here in terms of MBSE tools. So these are just 2 examples of on the left. This is from a functional analysis requirement report. So you've got your functions, your decomposed functions, and then your requirements. So the traceability of your functions to your requirements. On the right, it's functions to physical components. Okay. So what happens now? So you have your RAR with your requirements, your FAR with your functions, and your CDR with your components. So what happens now to the requirements list as you start to modify, insert, or delete functions? Well, you have to go back to your requirements manually, if you did this all in Excel, to modify those requirements. So, okay, it's a small enough project, you can probably do that. Components, you have changes to the components that change the functions. Now you have to kind of go through, clean up all those diagrams that you've done in PowerPoint, and then modify the requirements as well. So as you can see, this and especially if you're changing a lot all the time, you're doing a lot more work there. So one of the pros for the tool here is you've put it all within the system. You change one element and it ripples through and it makes the changes to all the rest of the both the diagrams as well as the data, and then you just output the data. So obviously you have to do all the work to be able to generate those. But that's one of the sort of plugs that we have in terms of MBSE tools for that. Yeah, Ryan. So good question there. Yeah, the deliverables do get graded by the I guess mentors prior to your presentation. And it's ungraded, but it's a 1 or a 0. 1 is your requirements are approved, progress to the next one, or 0 or anything less than 1. Hey, you need to do some rework, and so it will. And again, you have to kind of learn your mentor's style, but again, they kind of do those sort of interim kind of grades, and basically it's a pass-fail. And the intent here is that the mentor will have approved all of your products prior to your actual final presentation. We've seen some, CJ and I have seen some times where, hey, you're not ready. I know you said you were ready, but you're not ready yet because you haven't done it all. And hey, we need to reschedule the report there, or the final presentation. We've also seen, CJ and I have also seen that folks that try to jam it all in the last week, try to do it all, pull an all-nighter for a week, it does not work. Absolutely not. It does not work to get an A. So even if it does work, so yeah, don't. This is sort of the marathon. It's not the sprint. Again, it's a little different from previous courses, but good question, Ryan. Oh, right. So oh yeah. So at the very end, and I'll let CJ jump in here. What you've got here is the processes that our mentors have a grading sort of rubric that we use. He consults with the instructor, kind of before, and then as you've done your presentation, and then we kind of collaborate and give you your grade right there. So they know already, like, hey, this is like an A project, this is kind of a B project. Hey, this is on the borderline, depending how well you do in the presentation. And we've seen it kind of go both up and down if you're kind of borderline. But yeah, we do take the recommendations of the mentor quite a bit, and then the instructor and the mentor will collaborate. And we're kind of doing this in real time, so we give you your grade there. Yeah, if you get all ones, you'll complete the project. Now again, is that an A or a B? And it also depends on the quality, and they can also kind of dialogue with you along the way, like, hey, this is like an A effort, or this is like a B effort, or hey, this really needs some work. This is kind of like a C plus kind of effort here. CJ, do you have anything else?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a couple things based on first of all that question and the tips to succeed is really listen to what your mentor has to tell you. Your mentor is going to give you very good guidance along the way. As Dave has mentioned, they are going to come to the instructors with recommendations, not on the final presentation and your understanding of systems engineering, but more on the artifacts themselves based on their assessment. We have had situations where the mentors tell the student, we do not recommend that you are ready to move forward, and provide the feedback to the student as to why. We've had some students say, well, I'm going to go do it anyway. I would strongly recommend against that. Your mentors have a lot of experience in this area, and they can pretty much tell if they think that you're going to fall short of a passing grade. So if they give you recommendations not to move forward, there's good reason behind that. At the same time, as you go to present your final presentation, in addition to us as instructors reviewing all of your artifacts again and doing our own independent assessment, we're also assessing based on your presentation and answering of questions. A, how much do you understand what you did, and can you explain and defend what you've done on your project? Very important, because you should know everything. You should be the subject matter expert of everything that you did on your project because you were the author of it. And the second part is through the Q&A and how you presented your material, we will make a determination of how well you understand the foundations of systems engineering. So those two components, as Dave said, even if the grades, we concurred with all of the grades for each of the artifacts, those two areas could either bring you up or bring you down. So the presentation itself is also very, very important. You want to be adequately prepared to answer questions, to review your materials again. You might want to just review, some of the systems engineering fundamentals just in case some of those come up during the Q&A process. But again, so I'll just summarize what I just said. Always rely on your mentor. They're giving you good guidance. They're not keeping you from graduating, but if they tell you you're not ready, then you're probably not ready. So just listen to them. Our project instructors review everything again, but also assess you in those two other areas: understanding of systems engineering and the defense of the project. Those are not pre-assessed by your mentor. And as Dave said, also, we've been through hundreds of these, so we can do that real-time assessment at the end of your presentation along with your mentor to assess a final grade. So those are just some of the final comments that I have for you. Back over to you, Dave.
Okay, thanks, CJ. All right, so last couple of slides here, just other tips that we have seen. As you can see here, this is a pretty intensive effort. You can't do this at the last minute, and really just to be able to kind of work through it. And everyone has their own style in terms of keeping up with it, making sure you're doing it every day or two. I think when I did it, when I was a student, I had a kind of a calendar, and I'd kind of write in like, hey, here's what I did today, or here's what I did, the next day. And if there's like it's like an exercise calendar, and you get like a whole week where I haven't done anything, I'm like, wow, I feel like a slug here. I need to start working, on this. So, whatever works for you, to be able to kind of track both your efforts, keep your schedule, maintain your hours, keep your hours, because you have a guesstimate in terms of on your proposal. Hey, this is how long it's going to take in terms of 40 hours for my RAR, and here's the actual. So you're doing a little bit of earned value management along the way also. So yeah, also keep log your hours. Again, like CJ said, also talk to your mentor a lot. I've seen this before where folks will kind of be paralyzed a little bit and do lots more work just with themselves instead of that could have been solved with a 5 minute discussion with the mentor, and it's like, oh, this is what you mean, okay, got it, and you're moving on for that. Again, with the iterative approach with the requirements and a lot of the other things that are updating it, so don't try to get it perfect. Again, the RAR is kind of a weird beast because that's the first one. You're wanting to start in and get it all completely right. Like, yeah, you're still gonna iterate and update those. And again, the configuration control of your project. Oh, and that's it. That's the last slide here. Okay, so over to you all in terms of any other questions that you have. We've already had some great questions already, but if there's anything else that you have in terms of questions, hopefully this session is just to kind of give you an introduction to what to expect. Primarily, it was a lot of the timeline. If you're thinking about doing this for the spring, you still have time. It's kind of a little close, but yeah, absolutely, you still have time to be able to get this in and do this. We've seen it before for that. So Greg, good question. So yeah, talk with Jackie Rowe, and then she is the one that you need to link up with for both the Blackboard um, website, which is different again from your normal Blackboard one, and then also your mentors that will be there. You go through Jackie. She kind of checks for, give them your top 3 draft picks, and then she'll check with them for the availability.
Right, and to add to that is, Greg, the primary thing that you're looking for is for you to identify who you think your mentor should be. Reach out to them in an email and just make sure that they're available, and make sure that you find that that's the good match for you. All of our mentors have different characteristics, and some work better for students than others. So use that as an opportunity. And when you make that connection, as Dave said, you just let Jackie know, and then she can do this connection thing, which then basically aligns you and your grading to that specific mentor. And just another note also about mentors, as Greg looks like he's typing another question, is if at any point in time you're finding a difficulty to connect with your mentor for one reason or another, there could be something that may be going on. Don't hesitate in those scenarios to reach out to your project instructor, either Dave or myself. We're usually one of the two, and let us know. We don't want you to be waiting for weeks to be able to get in touch with your mentor. There could be something that happened, and if in rare circumstances that response is not happening for a reason, and we expect that to be the case for a while, we'll help you to be reassigned to another mentor. Okay, so we'll help you through that process if necessary. Yes, Greg, the matching can be done before the topic is selected. All of our mentors are pretty well equipped to provide you guidance through almost any type of project, hardware, software combined. You know, as Dave said, we were looking for ones that have elements of both. But if you have one that's more centric in one or other domains, they're pretty well in tune with that, as well as a variety of different technical disciplines. However, go ahead and take a look at their bios. If you're going to be in a specific area, you may want to find one that you can see that has demonstrated understanding in that area, even if you don't really know exactly what it's going to be, but you know what field it's going to be into. So keep that in mind. I'm really impressed by the mentors that we have right now. They have a significant breadth of experience, so I think they can address almost all projects. Now, in addition to that, you should always note that as was discussed at the beginning, it's really important for you to identify subject matter experts in the field that you're going to be doing the work. That's critically important to make sure that you can get a good set of requirements established in the front end, but also somebody that you can confer with so that what you're coming forward with in your conceptual design is something that's feasible. And so that's one of your jobs as part of your proposal writing, is to identify who those people will be. Okay, other questions? Back over to you all. Well, Dave, I think we hear the crickets chirping. What do you think?
Yep. All right. So thanks all for attending here, and it's good that you all came in. Obviously, you had some interest because you had registered for this. What we'll do here is, again, we'll work with Cheryl, who had developed that Eventbrite um, registration. What we'll do is we'll have this recording and have the slides. We'll send that to her, and she should be able to get that out to you, I think, through the Eventbrite, possibly quicker than when it goes on the website there. But again, it will go on the website, this recording and this set of slides for there. Okay, and again, hopefully this has helped to kind of help demystify some of the project. We try to do this about once or so a year, just to be able to get some question and answers, and just to get people just understanding, because you may have either heard some good gouge or bad gouge, depending who you talk to, from other folks that have gone through the program. We're continually updating this and improving it, so it's also got some changes. So folks that have gone through it a couple years ago may not have exactly the most up-to-date knowledge that we're giving you now in terms of where we're headed with a project. Okay, so that's it. So we'll stop the recording here. Thanks all for participating here, and again, you should be able to see that probably within this week when she gets back into work tomorrow to be able to get these out. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good one, and good luck in your project, and we'll all see you shortly in the project and graduation. All right, thanks. Have a good night.
Have a great evening, everybody.